The massive lecture hall buzzed with the sounds of 40 different alien species settling into their seats. Chittering clicks echoed from the insect-like Mantari students, while the crystalline Vorthak beings hummed in low frequencies that made the air shimmer. Gas-formed nebulons floated near the ceiling, their translucent bodies pulsing with soft bioluminescence, and the rock-skinned granite folk scraped against their reinforced metal chairs. Professor Velterra walked to the front of the room, her 4 arms adjusting the holographic projector, while her 6 purple eyes scanned the diverse crowd. She was a Hexani, one of the most respected species in academic circles, known for their methodical approach to xenobiology. Her scaled skin reflected the artificial lighting as she prepared for what she considered one of her most important lectures of the semester. "Welcome to Advanced Xenobiology 401, she announced, her voice carrying easily through the hall's translation systems. "Today we begin our study of the most dangerous planet in known space, Deathworld Sol 3, commonly called Earth." A wave of excited murmurs rippled through the students. Everyone had heard stories about the legendary Deathworld, the planet so hostile that it seemed impossible any life could survive there, let alone evolve into spacefaring civilization. In the very back row, almost hidden behind a towering granite student, sat the only human in the entire university. Jinho looked remarkably ordinary compared to his exotic classmates. His black hair was neatly combed. His simple blue shirt and dark pants seemed almost boring next to the elaborate breathing apparatus of the methane breathers and the shimmering energy fields that surrounded the plasma beings. He pulled out a basic notebook, actual paper, which fascinated many of his classmates who used neural interfaces or crystalline memory storage, and clicked his pen. Several nearby students glanced at him curiously. Most had never seen a human before. The stories they heard made humans sound like mythical warriors, but Jinho looked so normal. Professor Velterra activated the holographic display. A 3-dimensional image of Earth appeared, rotating slowly in the center of the room. The blue and green marble looked deceptively peaceful. Sol 3 represents the most extreme environment known to produce sapient life, the professor continued. Surface gravity is crushing by galactic standards. The atmosphere contains highly reactive oxygen that would corrode most species' respiratory systems. Massive storms regularly devastate entire continents. The geological activity is so violent that the ground literally moves and splits apart. The hologram shifted to show various Earth disasters, hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. Several students gasped, their various forms of expressing shock, creating a symphony of clicks, hums, and flashes. But the environmental dangers are nothing compared to biological threats, Professor Velterra said, her voice dropping dramatically. This planet has produced the most efficient killing machines in the known galaxy. The first creature appeared in the hologram, a massive grizzly bear, 8 feet tall on its hind legs. Its claws gleamed like knives, each one longer than most species' fingers. Its teeth were clearly designed for tearing flesh. "Behold Ursus Arctos," the professor announced. "Weight, up to 300 kilograms of pure muscle and rage. These creatures can run faster than most galactic sports vehicles. A single swipe of their claws can decapitate prey 3 times their size. Their bite force exceeds most industrial crushing equipment." A Mantari student's compound eyes widened in horror. How do humans survive alongside such monsters? "Excellent question," Professor Velterra replied. "Humans are remarkably fragile by galactic standards. No natural armor, no claws, no venom, no defensive capabilities whatsoever. They are essentially mobile meat packages. Yet somehow, they not only survived but became the planet's dominant species." She gestured to the hologram again. "Scientists theorize that humans developed advanced hiding techniques and extreme caution. They likely spent most of their evolutionary period cowering in caves, emerging only when absolutely necessary for food." Jinho shifted slightly in his seat, but remained silent. He glanced around at his classmates' horrified faces and suppressed a small smile. The professor continued her lecture, displaying image after image of Earth's predators. Massive sharks with rows of razor teeth, venomous snakes that could kill with a single bite, giant cats that stalked silently through forests, crocodiles that had remained unchanged for millions of years because they had achieved perfect killing efficiency. Each of these represents a nightmare scenario for most galactic species. Professor Velterra explained. The fact that humans survived in the same ecosystem is nothing short of miraculous. It speaks to their incredible cowardice and skill at avoiding confrontation. The alien students took detailed notes, recording everything about these terrifying Earth creatures. Some used neural implants to store the information directly. Others carved notes into metal tablets with their natural claws. A few simply absorbed the data through their skin. Jinho continued writing in his simple paper notebook, occasionally glancing up at the holograms with what looked like mild interest rather than the terror displayed by his classmates. He seemed almost bored. As the lecture continued, Professor Velterra began preparing for her next series of examples, confident that she was providing her students with valuable insights into the most dangerous world in the galaxy. She had no idea that everything she thought she knew was about to change. Professor Velterra clicked to her next hologram with practiced confidence. The image that materialized made several students recoil in their seats. A massive great white shark breaching the ocean surface, water cascading off its muscular body as rows of triangular teeth gleamed in the artificial light. Now we examine the apex predator of Earth's oceans, she announced, her 6 eyes gleaming with academic excitement. Carcharodon carcharias, the great white shark. This creature represents 400 million years of perfect evolutionary killing design. The hologram rotated slowly, showing the shark from every terrifying angle. Its black eyes seemed to stare directly at the cowering students. Notice the hydrodynamic perfection. Professor Velterra continued, using her laser pointer to highlight various features. Every aspect of this creature exists solely to hunt and kill. The teeth are replaced continuously, up to 35,000 in a lifetime. The bite force exceeds 18,000 newtons. Most remarkably, this predator has no natural enemies whatsoever. A collective shudder ran through the classroom. Several Mantari students clicked their mandibles nervously. The floating nebulans dimmed their bioluminescence as if trying to become invisible. The great white has ruled Earth's oceans unchallenged for millennia, the professor declared. No creature dares to hunt the hunter. Humans, being the fragile land dwellers they are, wisely avoid ocean waters entirely. Even their most primitive ancestors knew better than to venture into the domain of such perfect killers. In the back row, Jinho had stopped writing. He looked up from his notebook with a slightly confused expression, as if he had heard something unexpected. His pen hovered over the paper for a moment before he slowly raised his hand. The gesture was so unusual that it took Professor Velterra several seconds to notice. In all her years of teaching, she could not remember a single instance of a student interrupting her lectures on Deathworld predators. The material was typically too terrifying for questions. "Yes?" she said, her forearms freezing mid-gesture. Every eye, optical sensor, and consciousness node in the room turned toward the quiet human in the back. Jinho cleared his throat softly. Professor?" His voice was polite but uncertain. "I think there might be a small mistake." The silence that followed was so complete that the hum of the environmental systems seemed deafening. Professor Velterra blinked all 6 eyes in sequence, a sign of deep confusion among her species. "A mistake," she repeated slowly. Jinho nodded, looking almost apologetic for speaking up. "Well, you said great whites have no natural enemies, but that's not really true. Orcas hunt them pretty regularly." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Several students turned to look at each other, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of bewildered sounds. "Orcas." Professor Velterra's voice rose slightly in pitch. "Yeah, killer whales." Jinho explained, his tone remaining conversational and friendly. "They're actually really smart hunters. They work in groups and flip the sharks upside down to put them in something called tonic immobility. Basically makes them helpless. Then they eat the liver and leave the rest." A granite student's rocky exterior began to crack with stress. "They hunt the apex predator?" "Oh, sure," Jinho continued, warming to the topic. "There are these famous cases off California where orcas scared away entire populations of great whites just by killing 1 or 2. The sharks remember and stay away for months." Professor Velterra felt her carefully constructed worldview beginning to shift. But surely humans still avoid these waters due to both predators. Actually, lots of people go cage diving with great whites. Jinho interrupted gently. It's like a tourist thing. My cousin Miho does it every summer when he visits South Africa. He says they're usually pretty chill unless you're bleeding or acting like prey. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. A nebular student flickered so rapidly with distress that they resembled a broken light fixture. Your cousin voluntarily enters the water with the apex predator for recreation? Professor Velterra's voice had become very quiet. Jinho nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, it's really popular. There are tour companies all over the world. My little sister Yuna keeps asking if she can try for her 15th birthday next month. She's been watching shark documentaries and thinks they're fascinating. 15, the professor whispered. Humans study sharks a lot. Jinho continued, oblivious of the mounting horror around him. Marine biologists swim with them all the time. My friend's mom is a researcher who tags great whites to track their migration patterns. She says most of them are actually pretty curious about humans, not aggressive. Curious? Squeaked the Mantari student. Yeah. Apparently most shark attacks on humans are cases of mistaken identity. The sharks think we're seals or sea lions from below. When they realize we're not their usual food, they usually just swim away. Professor Velterra stared at the hologram of the great white shark, then at Jinho, then back at the hologram. Her entire academic understanding of Earth's ecosystem was crumbling in real time. So humans swim with the galaxy's most perfect killer machines for fun? She asked weakly. Well, usually in cages for safety, Jinho replied helpfully. But free diving with sharks happens too. There are some amazing videos online. The classroom had become a tableau of alien horror, with Jinho sitting calmly in the center of it all, completely unaware that he had just shattered everything his classmates thought they knew about his species. Professor Velterra's hands trembled slightly as she changed the hologram, hoping to regain control of her lecture. The image shifted to show a coiled rattlesnake, its distinctive warning rattle clearly visible and its fangs gleaming with venom. Perhaps we should examine terrestrial venomous species, she said, her voice struggling to maintain its earlier confidence. The rattlesnake represents one of Earth's most lethal creatures. A single bite delivers enough neurotoxin to kill most galactic species within minutes. The sound of their warning rattle has become synonymous with imminent death. Several students leaned back in their seats. The plasma beings flickered nervously, and one of the methane breathers adjusted his breathing apparatus with obvious anxiety. Humans must have developed extraordinary detection methods to avoid these silent killers, the professor continued, gaining some confidence back. Likely advanced scanning technology, or... Oh, those guys, Jinho said casually, as if recognizing an old friend. My uncle Dong-hyun deals with them all the time. The room fell silent again. Professor Velterra felt a familiar sinking sensation in her stomach. Deals with them? She asked carefully. Yeah, he's a park ranger in Arizona. Rattlesnakes wander into campsites pretty often, so he relocates them. Just picks them up with a stick and moves them somewhere safe. Picks them up, repeated a granite student, his rocky voice hollow with disbelief. Well, usually with a stick, Jinho clarified. But my grandmother Sora grabbed one bare-handed once when it got into her vegetable garden. She was really annoyed about her tomatoes. The hologram flickered as Professor Velterra's control over projector wavered. Your grandmother handled a deadly venomous predator because of vegetables? She didn't want to hurt it, Jinho explained. Just moved it to the field behind her house. Grandma always said most animals are just trying to live their lives, same as us. A sound like breaking crystal came from the Vorthack section of the classroom. One of the students had actually cracked under the stress. Professor Velterra desperately switched to the next image, a massive mountain lion. Its golden eyes staring directly at the camera, powerful muscles visible beneath its tawny coat. Surely the great cats command more respect, she said, her voice now openly pleading. Puma concolor, the ghost of the mountains. Silent death incarnate. These solitary hunters can leap 40 feet horizontally and drop from trees without warning. They stalk their prey for miles before delivering a killing bite to the neck. "We get those in our backyard sometimes," Jinho said, sounding almost bored. Professor Velterra made a sound that might have been crying. "In your backyard?" "Yeah, especially during dry seasons. They come down looking for water. My neighbor Hyojin chases them off with her garden hose when they bother her cats." "Garden hose," whispered a Nebular student, the words barely audible through the translation matrix. "She named one of them Steve because he keeps coming back for her bird feeders." Jinho continued cheerfully. "He's actually pretty chill. Sometimes he just lies in her shade garden during hot afternoons. Hyojin says he's probably just tired." The classroom had become a study in alien psychological collapse. Students were exhibiting stress responses from across the galactic spectrum. Clicking, humming, flashing, crackling, and in one case, what appeared to be silent screaming. Professor Velterra changed the image again, now showing a polar bear, its massive white form standing against an Arctic landscape. "The polar bear," she said weakly, "largest land carnivore, capable of smelling prey from 20 miles away, powerful enough to crush a walrus skull with a single bite." "Those are cool," Jinho said. "My teacher Minji took our class to Churchill to see them migrate. We stayed in special vehicles, but the bears mostly just ignored us. They're really focused on finding seals." "Your teacher took children to see the largest land predators?" Professor Velterra's voice had risen to nearly a shriek. "Educational trip?" Jinho nodded. "We learn about climate change and how it affects their hunting grounds. One bear actually came right up to our vehicle. The cubs were really playful." "Playful," repeated several students in unison, their voices carrying notes of hysteria. Professor Velterra switched images rapidly now, showing tigers, leopards, wolves, and crocodiles. With each new predator, Jinho had a story. His friend's father who worked at a wildlife preserve, his cousin who photographed big cats in Kenya, his aunt who studied wolf behavior in Yellowstone. "But how do you sleep?" burst out a Chitauri student, unable to contain himself any longer. "How do any humans sleep knowing these creatures roam freely across your planet?" Jinho looked genuinely confused by the question. "Most of them are more active during the day, actually, and they usually avoid people. We have houses and cities where they don't go." "But the constant fear," began a methane breather. "Fear," Jinho interrupted. "Why would we be afraid? They're just animals trying to survive. Like us, most of them are actually pretty beautiful and important for the ecosystem." Professor Velterra stared at her star pupil, a crystalline being called Resonance of Truth, who had begun emitting a high-pitched keening sound that indicated complete mental breakdown. She realized with growing horror that everything she had taught about Earth's ecosystem was fundamentally wrong. These weren't humanity's tormentors. They were neighbors. And if humans lived peacefully alongside such creatures, what did that make humans themselves? The careful academic atmosphere of the lecture hall exploded into chaos. Students abandoned all pretense of scholarly behavior as questions erupted from every corner of the room. The translation matrix struggled to keep up with the overlapping voices, clicks, hums, and harmonic frequencies of 40 panic alien species. "How do human children survive to adulthood?" shouted a quartz-sling student, his crystalline body vibrating with such intensity that nearby seats began to resonate sympathetically. Jinho blinked in surprise at the sudden attention. Kids are pretty tough, actually. They bounce back from stuff pretty well. My nephew Seojun fell out of a big oak tree last week and broke his arm, but he was more upset about missing his soccer game than the injury." A collective gasp rose from the assembled students. The concept of young beings voluntarily climbing to dangerous heights for recreation seemed to break something fundamental in their understanding of survival instincts. "But surely human settlements are fortified against these predators?" demanded a Mantari student, her compound eyes reflecting the holographic displays in thousands of tiny fragments. "Fortified?" Jinho looked confused. "Not really. I mean, we have fences around some places, but mostly animals just don't come into towns and cities. They have their own territories." "Then how do you protect your young during vulnerable sleep cycles?" pressed a Granite student, his rocky voice scraping with anxiety. "We sleep inside houses," Jinho replied slowly, as if explaining something very obvious. Most predators are actually active during the day anyway, and lots of people go camping where they sleep outside in tents. The word camping sent another wave of horror through the classroom. Several Nebula students flickered so rapidly they resembled a malfunctioning light display. Voluntarily sleeping outside in predator territory? One managed to whisper through the translation matrix. "Yeah, it's really popular," Jinho said, warming to the subject. "My sister Salmon takes her kids camping every summer. They roast marshmallows over fires, tell ghost stories, go hiking. The kids love it. Ghost stories." The question came from at least 15 students simultaneously, creating a cacophony that made the translation systems emit warning beeps. "You know, scary stories are fun," Jinho explained. "Kids like being frightened when they know they're safe. It's exciting. A plasma being actually destabilized at this revelation, requiring emergency containment from the automated safety systems." Professor Velterra, who had been standing frozen at her podium, finally found her voice. "Mr. Kim," she said slowly, each word carefully measured, "if these creatures do not represent existential threats to your species, what do humans consider genuinely dangerous?" Jinho pondered this question seriously, tapping his pen against his notebook. The entire classroom held his collective breath, waiting for his answer. "Well, drunk driving kills way more people than bears every year," he said thoughtfully. "Car accidents in general, really. And smoking, that's terrible for you. My doctor says sitting too much is dangerous too, which is weird because we do it all the time." The alien stared at him in bewilderment. "Oh, and processed food," Jinho continued. "All those chemicals and preservatives, way more harmful than wild animals. Most dangerous stuff is actually things we do to ourselves, not things in nature." A Vorthack student managed to croak out. "So the greatest threats to humanity are yourselves?" "Pretty much," Jinho nodded, "although some people do dangerous stuff on purpose. My friend Gunwoo does free solar rock climbing. That's climbing really high cliffs without any safety ropes. He says the fear makes him feel alive." Several students fainted at this revelation. The medical systems activated automatically, sending hovering drones to attend to collapsed beings. "Let me understand this correctly," said a methane breather through his translation device, his voice distorted by stress. "Humans voluntarily engage in potentially lethal activities for emotional satisfaction?" "Well, yeah," Jinho replied. "People do all kinds of extreme sports. Skydiving, bungee jumping, motorcycle racing, mountain climbing. My aunt just goes paragliding every weekend. She says it's peaceful up there." A sound like breaking harmonics came from the Resonari section as several crystalline students cracked simultaneously. "But why?" wailed a Chitauri student. "Why seek out danger when you have already survived the most hostile planet in the galaxy?" Jinho considered this question carefully. "I guess because we can. Like, we figured out how to make dangerous things mostly safe. So why not experience everything our world has to offer? Life's more interesting when you push boundaries." Professor Velterra felt her legs give out and had to lean against her podium for support. "Students," she announced weakly, "I believe we need to fundamentally reconsider our understanding of human psychology. There's this thing called adrenaline sports," Jinho continued, oblivious to the psychological devastation he was causing. "People pay money to be scared. Roller coasters, horror movies, extreme sports. My girl Fernari just started rock climbing, and she loves the problem-solving aspect. Says it makes her feel powerful." The classroom had become a disaster zone of alien mental breakdowns. Emergency protocols activated as students from multiple species exhibited severe stress responses. Medical drones buzzed through the air, dispensing various forms of psychological first aid. Through it all, Jinho sat calmly in his seat, occasionally answering questions with the patient demeanor of someone explaining that water is wet or that stars shine at night. He had no idea that he was single-handedly revolutionizing galactic understanding of human nature. 3 months had passed since that fateful day when Jinho accidentally destroyed everything the galaxy thought it knew about humans. The lecture hall that once held 43 terrified students now overflowed with over 200 beings from across the sector. Students hung from the ceiling supports, crowded in the aisles, and connected virtually from distant star systems just to audit what had become the most famous course in galactic academic history. Professor Velterra stood at her podium, no longer the confident xenobiology expert she had once been. Her 6 eyes surveyed the packed room with a mixture of pride and bewilderment. The course title had officially changed 3 times due to popular demand, finally settling on human psychology and Deathworld adaptation strategies. Jinho had reluctantly accepted the position of teaching assistant after the university offered him full tuition coverage and a small stipend. He still sat in the back row, but now he had his own microphone and a dedicated translation channel. His simple notebook had been replaced with a basic tablet, though he still preferred writing by hand when possible. Today we will examine recreational danger-seeking behaviors, Professor Velterra announced to the eager crowd. Mr. Kim, could you please explain the human concept of extreme sports to our new students? Jinho cleared his throat and activated his microphone. Well, extreme sport are activities that most people would consider dangerous, but humans do them for fun because the risk makes it exciting. A wave of nervous energy rippled through the audience. Many of the newer students had heard rumors about human behavior, but experiencing it firsthand still proved shocking. Could you provide specific examples? Asked a recently arrived crystalline student, her faceted body already showing stress fractures. Sure, Jinho replied casually. There's skydiving, where you jump out of a perfectly good airplane and fall toward the ground really fast before opening a parachute. My Aunt Jasu does it every weekend. She says the free fall is the most peaceful feeling in the universe. Several students required immediate medical attention. Then there's bungee jumping, Jinho continued, where you tie an elastic cord to your ankles and jump off bridges or cliffs. The goal is to fall as far as possible before the cord catches you and bounces you back up. A granite student actually crumbled, his rock-like body unable to handle the psychological stress. Professor Velterra had learned to keep medical teams on standby during these sessions. Mr. Kim, perhaps you could explain the human fascination with underwater exploration? Oh, scuba diving, Jinho nodded. My cousin Taeyong is a marine biologist. He goes down to the ocean floor in breathing equipment to study coral reefs and fish. He says it's like visiting an alien world, but it's right here on Earth. And they do this voluntarily? Whispered a nebular student. Yeah, it's really popular. There are diving schools all over the world. People save up money for diving vacations. My friend Minjae just got certified last month, and she's already planning a trip to the Great Barrier Reef. A Chitauri student raised a trembling appendage. But surely these activities are restricted to train warriors or specialized survival experts. Jinho looked genuinely confused by the question. No, pretty much anyone can learn. My little sister Yuna wants to try skydiving for her 16th birthday next month. My parents are actually considering it. The sound of multiple species having simultaneous nervous breakdowns filled the lecture hall. Why? The question came from everywhere at once, a desperate chorus of alien voices trying to understand something that defied their comprehension. Why do humans seek out danger? Jinho was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. The entire packed auditorium waited for his answer. I think, he said slowly, it's because we figured out that most scary things aren't actually as dangerous as they seem. Like, once you understand something and take proper precautions, you can experience amazing things safely. He paused, looking around the sea of anxious alien faces. And maybe because we learned to live with real predators, artificial danger feels manageable. When you grow up knowing that bears and sharks and snakes are just animals doing their thing, jumping out of an airplane with a parachute doesn't seem that crazy. Professor Velterra felt a moment of profound understanding. Students, she announced, I believe Mr. Kim has identified the key to human psychological resilience. They don't avoid danger. They study it, understand it, and then find ways to experience it safely. Plus, Jinho added, being scared when you know you're actually safe is kind of fun. It's like controlled excitement. The fear makes you feel more alive, but you know you're going to be okay. A senior Resonari student, who had been attending the class for weeks, managed to harmonize a question. So humans have transformed survival instincts into recreational activities? I guess so, Jino shrugged. We turn hunting into sports, fighting into martial arts, racing into games. Even our entertainment is often about overcoming challenges or facing fears. As the semester neared its end, Professor Velterra looked around at her transformed classroom. Students who had once cowered at images of Earth's wildlife now discussed human psychology with fascinated academic interest. The galaxy's understanding of humanity had shifted from miraculous survivors to something far more complex and impressive. Through the large windows, Earth hung in space like a blue marble, no longer looking like a Deathworld, but like a training ground that had produced the most psychologically resilient species in known space. The universe had found its explorers, its pioneers, its bridge between what was safe and what was possible.